Alexander Titov. He is a Russia affairs analyst and a lecturer at Queen's University in Belfast. Hi, Alexander. So, firstly, what do you make of all of these latest developments?
Well, I think there is a clear decision by Biden administration to send as much as it can, kind of cross all the previously kind of observed lines with Russia, with missile attacks, with landmines, with more weapons being sent. Basically, kind of the last gasp of this administration to give as much as possible. But I mean, I think even people in Washington know that this is not going to change the fundamentals on the ground. And the fundamentals on the ground is that Russia is slowly but surely having the upper hand. And whatever the strikes kind of NATO country can provide to Ukraine, Russia can always retaliate, incomparably more with its forces. So I think we're going to see a spike in mutual strikes, and Ukraine will be suffering more out of it than Russia, I'm afraid.
And yes, as you say there, Ukraine suffering more. And on that, which do you think President-elect Trump is going to be better for Moscow, as many have commentated, or better for Kiev, the way things are going?
Well, I mean, the basic issue here is that first of all, that there is, to keep supporting Ukraine, you need a lot more money coming from the United States. And I think, given the difficulty that the old administration, Biden administration, had passing the last $60 billion package, even if Harris won, that would be challenging for her. But with Trump, that'd be almost impossible because their heart is not in it, and there is a lot of structural issues limiting how much money they can send. So they would have, and so far as Russians are concerned, they are kind of in a good place at the moment, with things going their way. But the fundamental problem remains that the positions of the sides, Ukraine and Russia, on what the possible peace deal might look like, despite whatever Trump might think, is just so far apart that it's really hard to see how they can be reconciled unless America completely abandons Ukraine and Ukraine just collapses, which also seems to be quite rather extreme scenario for this point. So I think we will continue to see what's happening now for the foreseeable future, even with Trump administration in place.
But on that, Alexander, even if the US does give realistically everything it realistically can to Ukraine, is that enough for Ukraine to win the war?
No, of course not. That's the whole point. That Ukraine is all asking for kind of more things, and they're making a lot of kind of big campaign about F-16s, about HIMARS, about juveniles before the war started. Now the latest things was ATACMS missiles, but it's never going to change the reality on the ground that Russia simply went into higher gear. It has much more manpower reserves. It has its own industry, and its economy is still being functioning despite all the sanctions. So the only way what can really save Ukraine now, and that's, I think, is implicit hope in Kiev, is a greater involvement of NATO countries. So this is kind of using the missiles, NATO-provided missiles, NATO program, and NATO kind of intelligence supply missiles is a first step towards great involvement of NATO. So then you can perhaps see some form of air cover and so forth and so forth. So that's the only thing was happening. But there is absolutely no appetite for it in the United States. And the United States is the only military, despite what the Europeans might be saying, they are the only military who is actually capable of taking on Russia at this stage directly, and they're not going to do it. So I'm afraid for Kiev, it's just at the moment it's just grasping at the straws, really, hoping for something major happening within Russia, which is certainly doesn't look like it's going to happen. So I'm afraid Ukraine is in an extremely bad situation, and all the pronouncements to Zelensky with his peace plan, which was really embarrassing really to look at, which he went to Washington with, and now his new plan for internal resistance, which is also kind of sounds really strange that he's kind of losing grasp on things. Just proves how desperate they are, I'm afraid.
And again, why we saw Volodymyr Zelensky this week issuing a plea to European leaders. Thank you so much, Alexander Titov, live for us there from the University of Belfast.